It started with the biggest pipe bomb the FBI had ever seen.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
It ended in a dumpster after the largest manhunt in American history.
My knees knocked so hard that I was about to answer them. That's how nervous I was.
Eric Rudolph and the rise of anger.
Domestic terrorism has been metastasizing across the country for a long time now.
True story, true crime, true consequences for us all.
American Shrapnel, from award-winning journalists Becca Andrews and John Archibald, two-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Now available wherever you get your podcasts.
As a scientist, I can tell you that Sundays are only 24 hours long. But with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get every game every Sunday all in one place. That's upwards of 30 hours of NFL in one day. How can there be 30 hours in 24 hours, you ask? I have a theory. Magic. New users get NFL Sunday Ticket for 8 payments of $34.50 per month. Sign up at NFLSundayTicket.com. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games and commercial use. Terms and embargoes apply. Availability varies.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome to another episode of the No Huddle Show, our Philadelphia Eagles podcast for NJ.com. This is Cayden Steele, and joining me today, as always, will be my co-host, Bob Brookover. We've been out for a couple of weeks, but Bob joined me last night to preview the Eagles-Buccaneers game, which could be incredible this Sunday. A potential NFC Championship game in January, a heavyweight fight with two of the better teams in the NFC. We went over some of the matchups that could influence who's going to win this game and dive back into the past to determine whether the last two losses for the Eagles against the Bucs really means anything. And we also went back to last Sunday to talk about the Eagles-Rams game, a crazy comeback victory for the Eagles. What does it mean for them? Find out more in a few seconds. But first, this episode is brought to you by Penco Tech. With two convenient campuses in Blackwood, New Jersey, and in Bristol, Pennsylvania, Penco Tech has provided comprehensive hands-on career training for more than 50 years, featuring programs in HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and automotive technology, and more. With dedicated instructors and career placement assistants, Penco Tech can give you the skills and confidence to build a brighter future. Financial aid is available to those who qualify. Learn more and take the first step by going to pencotech.edu. And Bob, let's get right into what happened on Sunday against the Rams before we move over and talk about this Eagles-Bucs game that we'll watch down in Tampa this weekend. The Eagles pull off a comeback victory of the ages, down 26-7 at halftime, and they come back and they rally and they win. The passing offense that everyone was so concerned about came alive in the second half and took over that game. And then we saw the miraculous performances of Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and different guys on defense to kind of hold it together until the offense, picked up steam. And then we see the blocked field goals. I mean, it was a crazy game in general. They moved to 3-0. What were some of your takeaways from what we just saw, a few days ago?
I think my head's still spinning. I'm not sure exactly what we did see a few days ago. It was so crazy. They couldn't have looked more lost and played any worse than they did. They scored on the opening drive. They had an interception, and then 3 and out. Sack, disaster. Talking over at halftime, come out 2 plays in, fumble, next play, touchdown. You're down 26-7. Nobody in that stadium thought they had a chance to win it. I can't wait to watch the bad bets on this game, because if you bet the Rams in that game, I would love to be in a sports book when you were winning for 59 minutes and 58 seconds, and then with 2 seconds left, it all went down the drain.
Yeah. And Kevin Patullo said, something along the lines of, when he was just speaking about the offense, of tale of two halves. But I think overall as a team, it was kind of that story. In the first half, I'm thinking, my mind is in one place saying, are the Eagles not as good this year? Was those sluggish performances against the Chiefs and Cowboys, even though they won, has it caught up to them? Are they going to take a step back potentially? I mean, it was ugly. I mean, they lost Lane Johnson as well. So another thought of mine was like, okay, maybe it's just that factor of things, and the Eagles just need to get out of here healthy. I mean, that was my original thought when the Jared Verse fumble when he hit Jalen Hurts and he rocked him, and Matt Pryor was still in the game. I'm like, the Eagles just have to get out of here healthy. Kind of chalk this up to a situation, without Lane Johnson, and things got ugly, and they just need to learn from it and move on. And it's just going to be an ugly loss. But that one offensive series with the deep ball to AJ Brown really got things going, and then Jalen Hurts throws the touchdown to Dallas Goedert against cover two. That really got the offense going, and then Jordan Davis ended one of the Rams' possessions by chasing Matthew Stafford out of bounds I believe it was around the 49, maybe the 50. That caused the Rams to punt, and really from there, the Eagles got all the momentum, and they dominated that second half after looking really bad in the first half. And it speaks to how much talent they have. I mean, it's impressive that they were able to get themselves in that hole and then come back and win. Obviously, they don't want to be in that hole again, but not a lot of teams can come back in that type of situation and not lose their composure and still believe they can win. And that probably goes to Jalen Hurts' mindset when your quarterback and your leader is so poised. He played incredible in that second half. And that's a huge win. And when we talk about implications in the NFC, a Rams team that could be in the mix for a number 1 seed, and the Eagles just beat them at home.
Yeah, so if they should finish tied, they have that tiebreaker. That's it. It's a big win in that way. It's a big win in that way. The schedule's not getting easier the next 2 weeks. You got, although Denver I don't think looks as good as they did, but this week you got at Tampa Bay, where, as we know, as we saw last year, and we've seen in recent years, it's not an easy place for the Eagles to go and play. It was a really important win, and it was a really impressive win. AJ Brown to me was the guy who just took over that game. He had 6 catches for 35 yards in the first 10 quarters of the season, and then he had 6 catches for 107, whatever, 100 and something.
Yes.
And a touchdown. And the play he made on the 3rd and 10 after they on the final drive, I guess it was, when he just outmuscled the Rams defender, who was it, Darius
Williams. Yeah, that was incredible.
Darius Williams, and then he just took down 2 other guys like bowling pins, picking up 15 more yards up the field. I was looking at that play yesterday, and actually by the time the play was over, 15 yards up the field, Darius Williams had come back into the play to make the tackle. That's how many guys he had gotten by at before that. It was just really an indication of why he wants the ball and why you have to get him the ball more than they had in the first 2 games.
Yeah, he went for 6 for 109 and a touchdown, 18.2 yards per catch. So you talk about explosive, that means the requirement. After the game, reporter asked him, like, what was the difference in the second half? And I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he was basically saying, I got the ball and that made the difference. And it's true, they got him going. The plays that you mentioned there, especially on that drive that set up the go-ahead touchdown for Devontae Smith, the 25-yard catch and the 23-yard catch. I mean, it's not like the Rams defensive backs were in bad position. I mean, they had tight coverage, but it's just one of those things where AJ Brown's just a lot bigger and stronger and just more physical than most defensive backs can handle, especially a Rams defensive back group. It's, that's kind of undersized. It was a mismatch there, and the Eagles adjusted, and they did a good job. I mean, right now they can't get the run game going with Saquon Barkley. They haven't been able to. And who knows how long it's going to take to get going with teams stacking the box, really. And generally, an Eagles offensive line that's been really good at run blocking in the past, I don't think have been particularly good in that area so far. Does that have to do with that Landon Dickerson's still a little banged up potentially? Maybe. I don't think they're as strong in that area. And some of that factor has to do with them stacking boxes more, but it also has to do with the run blocking just not being particularly great right now. The Eagles might have to pivot to more of a passing attack, potentially, at least for certain matchups. And they showed that they can do it. I feel like we all knew they could potentially do it. And AJ Brown was incredible on defense, though. Bob, I already mentioned him, but Jordan Davis. I mean, the Stafford stack, then the blocked field goal that saved the game, and he returns it for a 61-yard touchdown. He breaks the record for the fastest return by a defensive lineman over 300 pounds. I think it was over 18 miles an hour. He has a fourth down run stop, and this is not just a one game performance. He said after the game he doesn't want to be a flash player, but I mean this is 3 games where he's been dominant to borderline dominant. He dominated the Cowboys game. It was a little more quiet, but he was displacing offensive linemen. In the Chiefs game, he was incredible as well. He's been one of the stories of the year to me. And now that you have him next to Jalen Carter, who's still working his way back into shape, I mean, once he hits his, max potential this year, they got the best interior defensive line in football.
Yeah, those two guys just lining up front. That's I would argue that it is the best interior line in football. If Jordan Davis is going to keep playing like that, and then you also factor in Moro Jomo, it's really that's a great trio of guys you can keep throwing at teams. And to me, edge rusher is very important, but I think the pressure that bothers quarterbacks more is the pressure that comes in their face, because it's harder to avoid. What do they say about a straight line, fastest point, something like that. Well, if they're coming straight up the middle at you, it's harder to get away from. And those two guys, and I don't think Jalen Carter has really even hit his stride yet. But when he does, and if he does, and if Jordan Davis can keep playing at this level, they've got something that's going to make other teams miserable.
Yeah, and as much as the defensive tackles are great, it's kind of getting swept under the rug how great Zach Bond was on Sunday, because he started out with the interception, and that was the highlight play that set up the touchdown. Then the offensive mess in the first half kind of took place from there, but he finished the game really strong. I think he had 3 run stops, which led the team. He was all over the field. He had the highest coverage grade on PFF for any Eagles player in that game. It was above a 90. Zach Bond continues to be incredible. Jahad Campbell is a really good player, especially as a rookie. I mean, the middle of the defense in general, I mean, where you want your defense to be strong in the interior is pretty good. Even though the Rams were able to run the ball a little bit, which Vic Fangio talked about today, which is a little curious. I mean, they had some success last year, Eagles as well, but I feel great about the middle of this defense. I feel really good about Quinton Mitchell as well, who shadowed Devontae Adams and had I think he only gave up like two catches according to Next Gen Stats. He was all over Devontae Adams. There were some missed opportunities by Stafford, but a good game from Quinton Mitchell. And really, that was it. The defense kept him in the game until the offense woke up. Now they're 3-0, and they're going to have to head back down to Tampa, a place, like you said earlier, Bob, that has given them some troubles. And a defensive coordinator, or not a defensive coordinator, but a defensive-minded head coach, and Todd Bowles, who specifically has given Jalen Hurts a lot of troubles. It's a few more. We got a little time before this game takes place, but what's your early expectations?
Well, I mean, the one thing the Eagles have been fortunate on is that they through 4 games is they have missed some good receivers. It happened in Kansas City. The Chiefs were without their 2 best receivers, Xavier Worthy, and their best receivers, Travis Kelce, but actual wide receiver Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice were not in that game. Rice, of course, suspended. Now they're going to miss Mike Evans. It sounds like the Bucs could get they're going to get a little bit healthier. It sounds like they could get Chris Godwin and their all-pro left tackle Tristan Wirfs back. But Mike Evans is a huge guy to be out of that lineup. But the Bucs, as you just said, have given have given the Eagles fits, and in particular, they've given um, Jalen Hurts fits. He's 1-4 against them with a passer rating of 74.7 in his career, 5 interceptions in 5 starts. 2 years ago, when the Eagles, not 2 years ago, last year, there was also a lost fumble in there that was key to that game, and he's even had trouble running against them. They've held him to 3.7 yards per carry average. So, Todd, teams have, and Kevin Patul addressed this today, teams have blitzed the Eagles a lot. Todd Bowles is known for blitzing a lot. So the Eagles are going to have their hands full. And, and on top of that, it seems like they play the fourth week of the season or somewhere around there every year, when in Florida it's still like 1,008 degrees when you factor in the humidity. And they're trying to combat that by going down Friday, so they can practice in the heat on Saturday. We'll see if it works. You give them credit for trying something, but make no mistake, this is a tough assignment for the Eagles. And Vic Fangio also has never beaten Baker Mayfield, who is 3-1, and he's also 3-1 against the Eagles with 6 TD passes and 1 interception. It's a tough assignment.
Yeah.
And Vic said that respect. That was one of the things Vic said today. He's always thought he's good, and because GM makes mistakes too. I guess those alluding to the teams that let him go. They made a mistake in his mind when they let Baker Mayfield go.
Definitely made a mistake, right? You look at the Panthers; they got Bryce Young at quarterback. The Browns are trotting out, 40-year-old Joe Flacco. They don't have a quarterback situation in the future, while Baker Mayfield's arguably playing at a top 10 level at the position right now. So definitely a mistake there. You look at this game, and I'm not trying to downplay how good Tampa Bay is. I do think they are a little bit weaker without Mike Evans, but the wide receiver core still has some juice there with Emeka Ibuka, who's been one of the best rookies in the entire NFL. I mean, plug and play. He's made a tremendous impact already. I mean, if they get Godwin back, I'm not sure what type of impact he has. Like, is he going to be 100% even if he does play in this game? But, I mean, Sterling Shepard is a reliable player. Cade Otton's a decent, pass catcher as a tight end. And they can run the ball with Bucky Irving and Rashad White. And they're pretty deep in that backfield rotation. And they have a defense that has some pieces as well. I mean, one of the best safeties in the game, and Antoine Winfield, and a great defensive-minded head coach. I mean, it's going to be a tough matchup. But in that same argument, or not argument, but just kind of in that same way, I don't know if the last couple of years have been representative of the true Eagles' potential when they've faced Tampa. I mean, this is the first time that the Eagles are playing Tampa Bay relatively healthy, as long as Lane Johnson plays. I know there is the report out there from Jason Dumas from 6ABC that maybe Adoree Jackson and Jacorian Bennett will be out, and if they're missing both of those guys, that could be troublesome as well. But if Lane plays in this game, it's a different story. I mean, this is a team that didn't have Lane Johnson last year in this game, that didn't have A.J. Brown in this game. If I recall, they didn't have Devontae Smith in this game as well. It was Jahan Dotson as wide receiver 1. So for as much as we talk about the heat being a factor, and it definitely was. I mean, the defense wore down. They were exhausted after the game. You saw that in the locker room last year. I mean, it definitely plays a factor, and I don't want to downplay that either. But I think the biggest factor was that Lane Johnson wasn't there, and that A.J. Brown wasn't there, and that Devontae Smith wasn't there last year, and they couldn't do anything on offense. They couldn't do anything on offense in the first half against the Rams without Lane Johnson. And they were in a bad position last year. This is a team that had to really galvanize after the bye week, change their offensive philosophy to a ground-first game with Saquon Barkley. Things were ugly. They were 2-2. People were talking about Nick Sirianni getting fired. And then 2023, when they lost to them in the playoffs, I mean, they were banged up without key players. A.J. Brown, I believe Reed Blankenship was out. And this is a team that was reeling then. After that collapse. I mean, this is the first time the Buccaneers have played a relatively healthy Eagles team who was coming off a high after a great comeback victory. There's not a lot of controversy around this team right now. there's talk this week that they could be the new Patriots. Just how they win. I mean, they've won every start the Jalen Hurts has been healthy in the last, every start
Since that Tampa Bay game.
besides the Tampa Bay game. That was the last one, right? So
That's every game that he's been healthy since then. They've won. Yes.
But without
they've won where he wasn't healthy too.
Yeah. I think Tampa's a really good game. So maybe I'm understating this, but I think this is going to be a tougher test for Tampa than it has been the last few years. This could be an end of the narrative that the Eagles, this narrative that Tampa Bay definitely has their number. I think it could end on Sunday because this team on paper is better and the heat is a factor. But I mean, the Eagles are healthy and they're a lot better positioned than these last two matchups.
Yeah, I would agree that the Eagles are the better team. And if you got them in the playoffs, that they would have beaten them. But the Bucs, Todd Bowles is a good coach. I mean, you look at what they've, to me, very impressive win at Houston, where they give up 266 total yards, 84 on the ground. They haven't given up 100 yards in a game yet, rushing. And the Eagles have struggled to get Saquon going through these first three games. They need to get him. So much has been made about the passing game and not throwing the ball enough, but an equal part of that problem is, teams have been able to get away with shutting Saquon down and then also not paying for it on the offensive end until the second half of the game against the Rams last week. So they, I have a lot of respect for this Tampa Bay team. They are just, and obviously the roster is a lot different, but they are just 5 years from winning a Super Bowl. Their GM, Jason Light is he learned his trade in Philadelphia as an Eagles guy, and I think he's done a great job. Doesn't even get enough credit for the job he's done down there. So it's a game I'm very excited to see. I really am. Experienced coaches down there. They got Tom Moore on offense. He's like 98 years old, and still going strong. He's actually 86 years old, which is an incredible story in its own. This is a game. I like to go to Tampa anyway, although last year was brutally hot, and I'm not sure I enjoyed it as much as I usually do. But this is also a fun game, and it's one of football's underrated rivalries, really dating to the early 2000s. These teams went at it in the playoffs in 2000, then again in 2001. Eagles won both of those games, and then with a chance to go to the Super Bowl and shut down the vet with a trip to the Super Bowl in 2002. The Bucs beat them and shut down and then went on to win their first Super Bowl. And then en route to their second Super Bowl with Tom Brady, they beat the Eagles again. There's good history between these teams. I even think Tampa Bay's, if I'm not mistaken, their first ever playoff win was against the Eagles.
Wow.
In 1979. Let's see it. Yep. Their first ever playoff win in franchise history in 1979. It was just, I think, was it 2 years or 3 years earlier that they were born? 3 years earlier they had gone 0-14, and they won their first playoff game. So there's some cool history here between the teams.
Seems like all the good moments in Bucs history, not all of them, because obviously the Tom Brady era, but a lot of them have come against the Eagles. And some of these stats from last year's game are pretty indicting towards what the Eagles were, and it's a good reflection point to think how bad they were playing at the beginning of last season, and then culminating to what happened at the end of 2023 against the Bucs last year. They missed 12 tackles, which is obviously really bad. And it's a team an Eagles defense that really struggled tackling at the beginning of last year. Jalen Hurts got sacked a bunch in this game. They had 2 turnovers. I do remember the fumble Yeah, it was 6 sacks for minus 44 yards. I mean, this is a Tampa Bay defense that just absolutely demolished an offense that was missing 3 key starters. And then you mentioned Baker Mayfield. I mean, Vic Fangio didn't have an answer last year against. They put up over 400 yards. Um, they just played a really sound and good game last year. Obviously, Tampa Bay doesn't have the high end talent that the Eagles have, but I do like this roster a lot, and that's why ultimately they could be a contender in the NFC if you look at the big picture. I mean, we talk about the Rams and we talk about especially the Lions after last night and the Packers, but why not Tampa Bay? They have one of the deeper rosters on both sides of the ball. I know that they have some injuries up front, but they could have the best trio of wide receivers if all those guys are healthy. They have a great ground game. The defense, I like a ton, especially the secondary. I even like their corners with Zion McCollum. And Jason Licht has built a great roster. It's funny to think that you can make an argument the best 3 GMs in football are Howie Roseman, Brett Veach, and Jason Licht, and they're all under the Eagles, under that branch.
They're on the tree. Yep.
They've all been incredible. So
yeah, we think it was a bad start Sunday for the Eagles. Last year in Tampa Bay it was 21-0 before the Eagles gained a yard. No, it was 24-0. I'm sorry, before the Eagles had gained a yard. They didn't have a single yard in that game, and they were down 24-0. And if you remember, remarkably, they did actually get back in the game, thanks in part to, of all things, a blocked field goal or a blocked extra point that they returned for a 2-point conversion.
Wow. Oh, yeah, I do remember. I mean, that's kind of – it felt – and it's kind of funny. I mean, it felt like that Rams game, other than the story at the end was a lot different.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But they blocked that extra point to get within I think 16 points. And it was not a good game. They did not play well.
No, they did not. I guess we've talked about this now. It's not going to be an easy game, but I want to give you the floor first. What's your prediction for what's going to happen on Sunday down in Tampa Bay, 1 p.m. I believe it's on Fox. I haven't looked at the weather yet, but I'm assuming it's going to be hot. I mean, it was hot last year. I mean, Bob, you make a good point. I didn't know where the press box was. I think I walked for like 10, 15 minutes and I was sweating and dripping through my shirt by the time I came in. So not the most comfortable game in terms of that. And it was just hot when I was down there, but I'm assuming that's going to be the same way. So do we expect the Eagles to win, or is this their first loss?
Whew, this is a tough one to call. I know I'm going to enjoy my Bananas Foster at halftime, although among all the bad things that happened last year in Tampa Bay, maybe the worst was the arrival of the Bananas Foster was late at halftime, and by the time it started coming out, I couldn't wait anymore, and I had to go back to work, and I did not get to have my Bananas Foster that I love so much in Tampa Bay. I will not miss that this year. And with my Bananas Foster in hand, I'm going to predict that the Eagles are, they're just due here. And I feel like Mike Evans being out, I feel like Vic Fangio really wants this game and wants to figure out how to beat Baker Mayfield. And he knows one of the keys to doing that is to keep him from getting out of the pocket and getting the kind of scrambling yards that Jalen Hurts gets so often to just crush teams. So I'm gonna pick the Eagles here. I'm gonna predict that they do pick up that passing game a little bit, and that Saquon Barkley has his best game of the season. And I'm gonna pick the Eagles 27-21.
Good pick. It's tough to pick against the Eagles. I did it last week. I thought the Rams were going to come in because of the offensive firepower that they had, and the Eagles were still figuring things out. And I really thought the Rams were going to win that game. And in the first half, I felt great about my prediction. I didn't expect it to be that ugly, but it looked like it was going to go the way of my prediction. I've learned now you can't pick against the Eagles again until they lose. I mean, I think we're at that point And if you look at the remaining, part of their schedule, there's not a ton of teams coming up where I'm like thinking they're definitely going to lose, or I think they're going to be not heavy favorites, but favored to win in every single game going forward. Maybe until they play Green Bay but at Lambeau in November. I mean, it's hard to predict them losing. I'm not going to predict them to lose to Tampa Bay. They are the better team, as you said earlier, Bob. I mean, at nearly every position, and you can say the same about the Eagles going against most teams in the league. They are just super talented, and I know the weather will play a factor, but they are due for a victory. They will be healthier. They're coming off a confidence boosting finish where I think they carry that momentum in the passing game. It seems like there's more of an emphasis. Everyone's communicating it in different ways. Like Kevin Patullo saying his message of the week was attack. I know Nick Sirianni tried to spin A.J. Brown's and Jalen Hurts' meanings after they talked about the game with A.J. Brown, saying, the offense shouldn't be conservative, and Jalen Hurts telling Pam Oliver that they shouldn't play to lose. I mean, it's obvious that there's been, and it comes from early in the week with Kevin Patullo's messaging, a shift in mentality. Because this team's too talented to not take some chances, and they took some chances in that second half by default in a way, like they had to get back into that game. But it also showed what they're capable of once they get A.J. Brown going. So I expect the passing offense to be great. And I think the defense has enough. I mean, obviously we talked about the interior. I think they'll be able to get some pass rush with the injuries that Tampa Bay has on their offensive line. And this is an Eagle secondary that's a lot better than the secondary that we saw in Week 4 last year, with Cooper DeJean getting involved after the bye week to replace Avonte Maddox. So you got a banged up wide receiver core. Tampa, if Quentin Mitchell can match and lock up Devontae Adams for the most part, I think he could do the same to Emeka Egbuka, who's a rookie. I'm going to go 24-17 Eagles. I think they move to 4-0, and I don't know when the first loss is coming, Bob, but I am more as much as I am excited about this game. That Bananas Foster idea, I didn't get any last year either, so I might have to try some. It'll be a first timer with that.
Yeah, we'll get it. We'll make sure we get that this year. I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to get our Bananas Foster.
Yeah, I definitely want to get some of that. The last just few points I wanted to touch on are pretty much the last point until we wrap up this podcast. The Eagles did make a roster move yesterday, claiming Xavier Gipson, the kick returner who had a fair amount of success with the Jets. Was pretty productive. Got waived after fumbling in Week 1 against the Steelers, and that cost him really the game. Then he was claimed off the waivers by the Giants. He only lasted about a week, but he's an experienced kick returner, punt returner. They added him after Tink Bigsby and John Mechie just couldn't field the knuckleball kicks from Joshua Carty. I mean, Bob, have you ever seen that happen in a game? And how does this, maybe they think Xavier Gipson can solve this, but I wonder how much of a concern this is for the Eagles going forward if other kickers can do this. I mean, that to me, that was one of the most crazy moments I've seen, where just every kickoff seemed like it was dropped and the field position was terrible. It is incredible that they were able to overcome all of that.
Yeah, well, I've seen hitters have trouble hitting the knuckleball. R.A. Dickey threw some no-hitters for the Mets. So I've seen it in baseball, but that's the first time I've ever watched a football game where the knuckleball gave the fielders fits. And they did, and they did. He was going to be the hero of that game. Those kicks were definitely impactful on the kickoffs. It was 4 for 4 in the first half on field goals, including one from 50 something. I forget the exact number, and then he got rejected. Like he was going up against Dikembe Mutombo, and it was the damnedest ending I've ever seen. So no, it's a real weapon. And Michael Clay was interesting talking about it today, because it sounded like Jake Elliott and Braden Mann were, after watching it, were like, we got to try to learn how to do that. But I'll say this: I don't know the difference between kicking a knuckleball and throwing a knuckleball is, but I know a lot of guys try to throw a knuckleball and couldn't.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of I'm not a huge fan of special teams. Like, I love football, but the special teams part, bores me for the most part, other than your occasional crazy kick or kickoff return. But that changed my mind. 2 block kicks in the fourth quarter. I don't know if we see that again or when we see that again. It might be a long time. But I do wonder if that is a skill that the Eagles have developed, or was it more of a matchup specific thing where the Rams were down a guard? They took advantage of that. But if Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter can continue to do that, that is a game changer. That makes special teams more fun. It'll keep my eyes more, glued to the special teams and not down on my computer while I'm writing during, a kickoff or something like that. Because I don't find special teams particularly interesting, but that I enjoyed entirely.
They've been calling it the dynamic kickoff, and that was the first time I really found it to be really dynamic, and it had nothing to do with the return.
That would change. That would change if kickers can do that more. That really changes, and especially if guys can't field it. That would change the outcomes of games, which is really interesting. But before we officially end this today and we move on for the rest of the week as we get ready for Eagles-Bucs, Bob, do you have any other final thoughts on this game or just the state of this team, where things stand?
No, there's a lot of people out there complaining about some things, and my brother is a lifelong Eagles fan, and he said to me before last week's game, "Have the Eagles won 18 out of 19 games?" And I said, "Yeah, they have." He goes, "Wow, we are some spoiled Eagles fans." And now they've won 19 out of 20, but people are still finding reasons to be unhappy. They're still not thrilled with the job that Kevin Batul is doing. And but you know what, Eagles fans, this is you're watching the greatest era of Eagles football right now. So rather than complain about it, just sit back and enjoy the ride.
It's well said. Well said. You could be a fan of the Titans right now, or the Saints, where Kellen Moore is at, where I'm sure their fans are not happy with the way things are looking down there. It could be a whole lot worse. It couldn't be any better, though, at the same time. And this is the most dominant team in the league right now. And at this point, unless something really changes, probably going to be the favorites going into the playoffs, or one of the favorites at least to go back to the Super Bowl and win. This is a fun team on defense and offense. There's so much talent, and that is credit to Howie Roseman for building a pretty great roster. And there are some holes, here and there, and Kevin Batul is still, is learning on the job, and I'm sure there might be some more ups and downs, but even with those ups and downs, they find a way to win, and we'll see if they win on Sunday against Tampa. Stay tuned for more coverage throughout the week. We're going to have written content all week about this game. Locker Room opens up with players tomorrow, and we'll make sure we have you covered. And thanks for tuning in. We always appreciate everyone who comes back and listens. We appreciate new listeners as well. And we'll catch you soon. Everyone have a good night.
Doug. Limu and I always tell you to customize your car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. But now, we want you to feel it. Cue the emu music, Limu.
Save yourself money today. Increase your wealth. Customize and save, we say.
That may have been too much feeling.
Only pay for what you need at LibertyMutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.